President Yoon holds his first face-to-face talks with Japan's new Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba over in Laos, where ASEAN-related meetings are taking place. At the multilateral meeting, South Korea elevated its relations with the region to the highest level. South Korea secures a seat on the UN Human Rights Council, once again to take part in global efforts to address human rights issues, including those in North Korea. U.S. President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a phone call over the escalating conflict in the Middle East. Israel reaffirmed its strong will to retaliate against Iran after the talks. It's October 10th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We begin with the latest in Vientiane, where President Yoon is engaging in a string of bilateral summits as he attends ASEAN-related meetings. Among his scheduled meetings, eyes are on his first talks with the new Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. The summit took place in the late afternoon, and we connect to our correspondent Oh Soo-young to learn about this meeting. Soo-young, we understand that the full details aren't out just yet, but we've heard the leaders' opening remarks. What would they have talked about?
Good evening, Tong-min. You're right. President Yoon Suk-yeol and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba began their first ever summit around 2 hours ago in Laos. Of course, it couldn't be a long meeting, given that it's taking place on the sidelines of the ASEAN-related summit, as one presidential official pointed out. But there are some obvious topics they're likely to have addressed. They'd have spoken after the ASEAN plus 3 summit, so it's likely Yoon and Ishiba may have expanded on that. But more importantly, they most definitely would have discussed ways to further advance bilateral relations, especially as next year marks the 60th anniversary of normalizing diplomatic ties. President Yoon referred to this in his opening remarks.
특히 다가오는 2025년은 한일 국교 정상화 60주년을 맞이하는 해입니다. 양국 관계의 희망찬 미래상을 제시하고 양국 국민들이 양국 관계 도약을 체감할 수 있도록 총리님과 긴밀하게 협력해 나갔으면 합니다.
The two leaders may have discussed Yoon's trip to Tokyo or vice versa. They did agree last week during their first phone call to continue the kind of top-level shuttle exchanges Yoon and former Prime Minister Fumio Kishida had engaged in. They also agreed to address North Korea's nuclear threat and common challenges in the Indo-Pacific.
Right, Soo-young, what was their interaction like, and what does it tell about the future of the bilateral relationship?
Well, Tong-min, I'd say we've so far seen a positive start. As Yoon and Ishiba met, we saw them greet each other quite warmly and also exchange friendly remarks. Now, this one-on-one summit is really significant as it comes just 9 days after the Japanese PM took office, shortly after which Yoon had called in following US President Biden's phone call to Ishiba. Now, Yoon and Ishiba spoke for about 15 minutes on the phone last week, and this indicates that the two neighbors' often rocky relationship can continue to progress in a constructive, future-oriented way. Yoon in 2023 reached out to Tokyo to overcome historical sticking points that soured their ties for decades, sparked by Japan's imperial atrocities. In the months following, he and former Prime Minister Kishida engaged in their so-called shuttle exchange diplomacy, which enabled the two countries to form a trilateral cooperation framework with the United States at Camp David last year. Yoon told Ishiba Thursday that he hoped to continue strengthening the bilateral relationship through active and close communication as he had with Kishida, and the new Japanese Prime Minister responded in kind.
I intend to carry on and further develop the greatly improved relations between our two countries, which was strengthened by former Prime Minister Kishida and yourself. I also hope to make good use of shuttle diplomacy and work closely with you, President Yoon.
As Yoon built a great rapport and personal friendship with former Prime Minister Kishida, there's naturally been great interest in how the relationship would play out, personally as well as bilaterally. Most observers I've talked to are rather optimistic, given that the Japanese Prime Minister does have a rather dovish stance when it comes to facing up to Japan's imperial atrocities. And as a security expert and former defense minister, he has a rather Asia-centric approach to diplomacy and geopolitics.
Ishiba places a lot of importance on Japan's national identity and philosophy, so I believe he will aim for broader security cooperation between Korea and Japan, rather than just focusing on historical or territorial issues. He'll likely focus on promoting a relationship centered on security cooperation in East Asia.
So from what we saw of it, the meeting looks like it's gone rather well, and as well as it could go, I would say. But we, of course, have yet to hear the details, and I'll be keeping you updated on that, of course, Tongmin.
All right, our senior presidential correspondent, Woo Soo-young, thanks for the updates.
Thanks.
And staying in Laos, President Yoon and his ASEAN counterparts have established a comprehensive strategic partnership. For details on the day's events, I have our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon standing by live. Hi, Do-yeon.
Savaidi, Jungmin. As you said, the dialogue relationship level between South Korea and the ASEAN is now at its highest, at a comprehensive strategic partnership. This had been announced last week prior to departure, but it was officially elevated earlier today in light of President Yoon's trip to Vientiane here for the ASEAN Summit. First, take a listen to what the President and the ASEAN Chair, Laos Prime Minister Sonexay Siphandon had to say.
이러한 최고 단계의 파트너십을 바탕으로 한국과 아세안은 새로운 미래의 역사를 함께 써 나갈 것입니다. 한국은 아세안 중시 외교를 이어가는 가운데 공동 번영의 파트너로서 전방위적이고 포괄적인 협력을 추진해 나가겠습니다.
Today's ASEAN ROK Summit provides an excellent opportunity to change the future course for cultivating the ASEAN ROK Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, which will be officially elevated today, with the goal of enhancing connectivity and resilience for the benefit of the people of ASEAN ROK and the world.
Now, to put this milestone into context, only 5 out of 11 nations that are in dialogue relationships have won at this highest level. Two sides also adopted a joint statement to detail the cooperation. South Korea and ASEAN addressed key security issues, affirming the importance of maintaining peace, stability, security, and freedom of navigation and overflight in the South China Sea in line with international law. While ASEAN members backed President Yoon's August 15 unification doctrine, a push for the resuming of peaceful dialogue with North Korea with denuclearization and maintaining peace on the Korean Peninsula. The two sides also have agreed on specific ways to enhance economic, environmental, and civilian exchanges. There will be a group created for South Korea to assist ASEAN members to digitalize, while another one to reduce methane gas emissions.
And Do-yeon, another key meeting for the South Korean president is the ASEAN +3 summit. What was President Yoon's focus there?
That's right, Jungmin. The ASEAN +3 summit is where ASEAN members and the leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China hold a summit. Making his address at this meeting, President Yoon referred to this year's ASEAN summit theme of enhancing connectivity and resilience to propose 3 ways to enhance connectivity between the 3 East Asian nations and ASEAN members. There were connectivity that's institutionalized, connectivity for cooperation in the future areas, and connectivity for civilians. Take a listen.
특히 올해의 아세안 정상회의 주제가 연계성과 회복력의 강화인 만큼 대한민국은 영내 자본과 물자 그리고 사람이 더 자유롭게 흐를 수 있도록 연계성을 강화해 나가고자 합니다. 연계성이 제고되면 위기 앞에서 우리의 회복력도 좋아질 것입니다.
As for the engagements that are coming up, President Yoon is set to join the participating leaders at a gala dinner hosted by the Laos Prime Minister later this evening. Also, before he returns to Seoul tomorrow, he will join the East Asia Summit, where 18 leaders are set to join in for a meeting. It's notable that the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Russia's top diplomat Sergei Lavrov will also be present at the meeting at the same time. That's all for now. Back to you, Jungmin.
All right, Doyeon, thank you for that. That was our correspondent Kim Do-yeon reporting live from Laos. South Korean Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun spoke with his new Japanese counterpart Gen Nakatani during their first virtual call today. Kim congratulated his Japanese counterpart Nakatani on his inauguration. They discussed enhancing defense exchanges and cooperation, as well as trilateral coordination with the U.S. in response to North Korea's advancing nuclear threat and increasing military ties with Russia. The ministers underscored the importance of maintaining close contact on key security issues and discussed the possibility of an early visit by Nakatani to South Korea. South Korea was elected to the UN Human Rights Council for the next 3 years. It has vowed to actively participate in international discussions on human rights issues, including those on North Korean human rights. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji reports.
South Korea has secured a seat on the UN Human Rights Council for the 2025 to 2027 term. The country received 161 votes out of 190 voting countries in an election held in New York on Wednesday local time.
The following 18 states have thus been elected members of the Human Rights Council: Republic of Korea, Spain, Switzerland, Thailand.
Out of a total of 47 seats, 13 are assigned to the Asia-Pacific region. South Korea was among 6 nations that competed, along with Thailand, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Cyprus, and the Marshall Islands, with Saudi Arabia the only candidate not elected. This is the 6th time that South Korea has been elected as a member since the council was first established in 2006. It last served during the 2020 to 2022 term, but failed to be re-elected in 2022. Seoul's foreign ministry emphasized its commitment to contribute to universal values and vowed to take an active role in North Korean human rights issues.
As a member of the Human Rights Council for the next 3 years, our government will actively participate in discussions on major human rights issues, including North Korean human rights, and take part in the global community's efforts to protect and promote human rights.
Wednesday's election means that South Korea will simultaneously serve on 3 of the UN's major bodies next year, including the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, and the Human Rights Council. The ministry explained that this reflects the international community's positive evaluation of South Korea's efforts aimed at supporting United Nations activities, and pledged to contribute to the global community in all areas, including peace and security, development, and human rights. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
One of the most severe impacts of climate change is extreme weather conditions. And this has contributed to a shortage in the supply of vegetables, causing prices to jump. It's a phenomenon referred to as climateflation. This week, we take a closer look at this issue, and for more, our economics correspondent Lee Soo-jin joins me in the studio. Soo-jin, what's the situation and how are businesses in the country dealing with this?
Right, so you might have noticed how restaurants have started to use ingredients other than domestic Napa cabbages for kimchi. And this is because of the significant rise in the price of vegetables, which is particularly noticeable as a rise in overall consumer prices have fallen to the 1% range in September for the first time since March 2021. So I went to see how businesses are coping with this situation, so let's take a look. Step inside this wholesale market and you'll be able to see prices from the past. Located in Gyeonggi-do province, this wholesale agricultural market has become a haven for restaurant owners, offering direct purchasing to save on costs. And that's why many, like Kim Tae-ho, who runs a 닭갈비 or spicy stir-fried chicken restaurant, are regulars.
Sometimes I come up to 4 times a week. Lettuces that used to be 15,000 Korean won have surged up to 150,000 won because of the heat wave.
He says he used to purchase vegetables from middlemen, but he now buys them directly from the stall. In September, prices of Napa cabbages were up more than 50% and radishes around 40% compared to the previous year.
Prices are already super high, but what middlemen charge is higher than the wholesale price, which is why I started to come out here.
While the stall owner says Kim isn't the only one who's begun to purchase directly from him since prices have gone up, he says that securing supply hasn't been easy.
There are slightly more people now, and most of them are regulars. But because the weather has been terrible, supply is scarce.
And knowing that his regulars rely on him, he ensures they get the vegetables they ordered at a fair price. After securing his supply, Kim heads straight to his restaurant to prepare for the dinner shift. This involves setting a table with various dishes, most of them vegetable-based, which is why he says the cost of running his restaurant is higher than ever. But because this is due to climateflation, or inflation driven by climate change, long-term solutions such as changing agricultural practices are necessary.
Climate change is worsening. It has gone from global warming to extreme heat waves. There needs to be a strategic relocating of cropland and farms.
He added that customers will also need to become more open to purchasing alternate vegetables if certain types become too expensive.
Sujin, what are some measures that are being carried out to mitigate this problem?
Sure. So while what the experts suggest were more long-term solutions, there are measures that have been already implemented by the South Korean government to lower prices. Many Napa cabbages struggled to form heads in August and September due to high temperatures and droughts, but conditions have improved this month. Consequently, shipments are expected to rise, with the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs offering transportation subsidies for cabbages until next Tuesday, with extensions if necessary. And the government has also begun importing Napa cabbages from China since late last month. With these measures, the Agriculture Minister said on Wednesday the prices are expected to stabilize at the end of this month.
And how are rising prices because of climate change impacting other countries?
Right, so like you said, climateflation is impacting countries from across the world, which is why global food chains have become strongly impacted. And it's not just vegetables, but also fruits. Brazil, which produces 70% of the world's orange juice, has faced its lowest harvest level since 1988 due to climate-related issues, including severe droughts and extreme heat. And this has led juice companies to consider switching to mandarins for juice production. With ongoing climate change, consumers are likely to continue seeing various new agricultural practices and alternative options like this in the future.
All right, Sujin, thanks for your report today.
Thank you for having me.
The latest assessment says strong exports are driving the Korean economy, but sluggish domestic demand is reportedly holding back a full acceleration forward. This is according to the Korea Development Institute's monthly assessment released on Thursday. Weak construction investment has been cited as reason for the lackluster domestic demand, which has been slow for 11 months in a row since last December. Meanwhile, exports in September posted an on-year surge for the 12th straight month on the back of semiconductor shipments. Amid medical reform conflict that's been persisting for 8 months, the government and medical professors held a public debate today in an attempt to find common ground. However, they only reaffirmed their differences when it comes to increasing the number of future doctors. Choi Min-jung sheds light on the details.
A public debate session was held on Thursday between the government and medical school professors from Seoul National University. It involved the Senior Presidential Secretary for Social Policy, Jang Sang-yoon, and marked the first time a Senior Presidential Secretary participated in a debate session on the matter. The senior official explained that an increase of 2,000 seats for the medical school admissions quota is the bare minimum, given the country's rapidly aging population. Tang said there will be a shortage of more than 20,000 doctors by 2035, meaning the increase should be made by at least 4,000, double the currently proposed quota hike. Medical professors, on the other hand, argued that excessive reform measures or radical changes can lead to unexpected side effects. Instead of increasing the admissions quota, the professors requested an even distribution of doctors in regions outside the capital. Since February, thousands of trainee doctors have been refusing to work in protest of the government's decision to hike medical school admissions by some 2,000. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
South Korea's COVID-19 vaccination for the late 2024 to early 2025 period will start on Friday, October 11th. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency said that vaccinations will be available until April 30th next year. The agency added that people aged 75 and older or those in high-risk facilities can get vaccinated from the 11th, those aged 70 and older from the 15th, and people aged 65 and older from the 18th. A new JN1 vaccine against the latest COVID variant will be used. Also, people 65 and older can get both COVID and flu vaccines at the same time. Those who are not eligible for free vaccines can get vaccinated at nearby medical centers for a fee. U.S. President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have held a 30-minute phone call amid rising tensions with Iran. After the talks, Israel's defense chief said an Israeli strike against Iran will be lethal. Cha Yun-kyung has the latest.
U.S. President Joe Biden held a direct call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday local time, in which they discussed the sharp escalation of Israel's conflict with Iran and its planned response to an Iranian ballistic missile attack. It has been 49 days since the two leaders had a direct conversation on August 21st. As the Middle East remains on edge amid the battle between Israel and the Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon, President Biden spoke with Netanyahu on the need for a diplomatic settlement. Vice President Kamala Harris also joined the call, according to a statement from the White House.
And obviously the two leaders had an opportunity to talk directly. Like I said, it was productive, it was direct, it lasted about 30 minutes.
The two leaders exchanged views on the urgent need to minimize harm to civilians and the need to renew diplomacy to release the hostages held by Hamas. They agreed to remain in close contact over the coming days, both directly and through their national security teams. The White House, on the other hand, did not clearly mention the two leaders' conversation over the means and level of Israel's retaliation against Iranian missile attacks, although Biden condemned Iran's strike on Israel on October 1st. This has led many to evaluate that there was no tangible outcome of the call. Meanwhile, Israel is sticking to its position on Iran's attack. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant promised that an Israeli strike against Iran will be lethal, precise, and surprising. Gallant mentioned that whoever attacks Israel will be hurt, pay a price, and will see the devastating results. U.S. media outlet Axios reported that Prime Minister Netanyahu will convene Israel's Security Cabinet on Thursday for a vote on military action, which could also lead to an all-out war with Iran. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
The daytime temperature in Seoul stayed at 22 degrees Celsius today, but from tomorrow, it will rise to around 25 in the middle of the day. It had rained in some areas up until this afternoon. Tomorrow will be mostly sunny, exceeding the average temperature during the day. The temperature difference between day and night will be very large, around 10 degrees. Please take care not to catch a cold. The waves will be high on the coastal areas of Gyeongsang-do provinces and Jeju Island for the time being. As waves can cross rocks and break waters, you should pay attention to coastal safety accidents. Tomorrow, Chuncheon and Daejeon will start off at 12 degrees, Gwangju and Daegu 13 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 25 in Gwangju, Daegu, and Gyeongju, Busan 24 degrees. During the weekend, clear skies will be revealed, which will be good to do outdoor activities. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
And we have breaking news. This just in, the Nobel Prize in Literature has been awarded to South Korean author Han Gang, quote, for her intense poetic prose that confronts historical dramas. Han is the first South Korean to win a Nobel Prize in Literature. And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.